Hello. Neve, how are you?
I'm very good up here.
How's it going so far? Any highlights from the morning?
Yes, we've heard some incredible people, some legends from the industry up here already. I think it's been such a great start to the day. And we've had a lot of breaks, which I feel like makes quite a big difference.
Absolutely, 100%. So I think I might be staying on stage for the next session. Is that right? What have we coming up next?
Indeed. Here we go. So our final session before we take another break, which is longer than the other breaks because it's lunch break, we're hearing about future measurement strategies. Joining our panel debating all things measurement challenges is Gordon Black, Director of Paid Media Measurement at Adidas, Jenny Zhang, Regional Director of Data Science at Worldwide, Virginie Chesnais, CMO of happydemics, Samir Modha, Measurement Innovation Lead for ITV, Phil Spencer, General Manager UK at ScanmarQED, and our chair, Sam Tidmarsh, from Adwanted Events.
Wow. That's a bumper-sized panel, right? And you can see us all up here. So I'm not going to do too long introductions here, but by all means, if you would like to introduce yourself when you begin, that would be fantastic. What are we talking about? It's pretty clear, I think, from this morning why we need to measure media audiences. That's why we've got the origins. That's why we've got the JICs. We've discussed that. Now I want to shift the focus slightly. Exactly. We're going to be talking about outcome measurement. And why? Well, who wouldn't want to know how their money is impacting business performance and revenues? I think that's something we would all like to see very clearly. So we've got a fantastic panel. Gordon, I think I'll come to you first, if that's okay. Let's imagine you have the perfect measurement framework. Everyone in your team's really happy, delivering fantastic return on investment. You're making better media choices for the team. It's all down to the work that you're doing as a measurement person. What's in that measurement framework? What do you need?
Nice. Were you in my results session yesterday? It was perfect. To be honest, first of all, I'm Gordon Black, so Director of Media Measurement at Adidas, based over in Amsterdam, responsible for making sure we learn from every euro we invest in Europe. But basically just to give people confidence to keep doing cool things. So to come to that question of like, well, what is this ideal framework? I think Sky and Tom just presented shortly before what I would consider the gold standard framework. The key thing he talked to was the triangulation of core capabilities. So you have attribution, digital attribution for all its flaws, it has a part to play. You have experimentation, the gold standard of learning about something that you can truly control for. This happened versus it didn't happen here. And then combine that together in MMM or econometrics to have kind of all of these tools working together. The key point there is they all have to be working together. They have to be singing on the same hymn sheet and actually kind of all laddering up. I like to think of it as instead of single source of truth, the reality is we're beyond that. There's too many data and figures and values that you can talk to. You'll have a single framework of truth. So then you need to make sure you're using the framework in the right way to bring it all to life. So we talk about digital attribution still has a part to play. It is a real-time signal. You shouldn't ignore the ability to make sure things are operating in real time, but you can't be making long-term decisions based on what you're seeing right now. So you should use that, to track in-channel performance. Is tactic A look to be outperforming tactic B? That's fine. Although even that, well, are you doing that scientifically? Are you able to talk about incrementality? That's where you then want experimentation and make sure that you're actually doing something that isn't just, well, we did this, we saw this outcome. How did we improve that outcome only happened thanks to the exposure of that activity? Tom, actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep referencing Tom. I thought it was a really good session. Rapid, but really good. He talked about the magic word of incrementality. And I think, actually, magic is a dangerous word to use. It's so powerful. Incrementality has become the new mobile, the new digital, the new AI, we all use it and we all mean something different and we all think we're being really smart because we know what we're talking about, we know what we're referring to. But incrementality now in the world of measurement is the most dangerous one for me because it gives the illusion of saying that you're certain you're getting meaningful outcomes off the back of this. If you've not actually controlled for things and said, well, are we getting a difference versus those that hadn't been exposed to our campaign? If you've not done that, your incremental lift is meaningless. You're not comparing to something useful. And then, yeah, linking it to MMM, kind of all of it can piece together to form a single framework of truth.
What's specific to you at Adidas compared to other advertisers in the room?
Yeah, well, to be honest, there won't be that much interest in that. The specific things to us is probably sports marketing. You know, our product is our people. Jude Bellingham, such a big part of our summer. Even I was happy when he scored that overhead kick for England. Not just for that beautiful shot of the Predator upside down. But sports marketing, that has a different effect, and it's such a big part of our investment. How do you compare traditional advertising to sports marketing? So we've had to explore kind of really advanced ways of thinking about the true long-term effects of that. And these can be really long-term effects, and it's not just on sales. I credit myself with working at Adidas now for falling in love with the brand when they sponsored Rangers 20 years ago. It's more than that, sadly. Wow. There's really long-term effects, you have to think about them. But then other brands have their own challenges, so others will focus more on customer lifetime value. When you're a subscription brand, the sale now doesn't matter. There will always be differences. The framework and principles are the same, but the execution will be completely unique for each business.
Phil, who is it that should actually be doing the measuring? Is Gordon's team at Adidas? Great to have an in-house team, but surely not all brands can do that. Is it better left actually to agencies? Would you advise Gordon to resign and go agency side?
So it's a good question, and like most things, the answer is it depends, which is the boring answer, I guess. Just to quickly introduce myself, so I'm Phil, the General Manager at ScanmarQED. So we're a technology company focused on marketing effectiveness measurement with specialised solutions for marketing mix modelling and digital attribution. So I've personally worked different sides of kind of the MMM industry to answer this question. Starting out agency side, actually prior to Tom's involvement at Sky, so kind of working on Sky. And if you're an agency selling MMM, the big sales point is about integration. So you're really close to the client, really understand the strategy, really understand media, and you can actually implement the findings from the measurement in the planning process. So that maximises your chances of actually using the results of this measurement. However, agencies are always going to suffer from the marking your own homework, critique or argument, I guess. So if you're an external vendor, you'll always argue that you need an independent view of your measurement. Personally, I think that does a disservice to agency people who, by and large, are kind of doing the right thing for their clients. However, enough people believe it that even the suspicion of that can be problematic. So when you look at an external consultancy for MMM, these guys have a lot of expertise, and that's largely due to the volume of work they're doing for many clients across many different industries. But if there's a downside to working with an external consultancy, that tends to can be slightly further away from the business than an agency might be. Can be seen as quite expensive, and it can occasionally, depending on the vendor, be seen as something of a black box. So you, as the advertiser, might not necessarily know what's going on in the model, what really is telling you and having full access to those results. So what we believe is that there's an alternative approach, which is bringing this kind of analytics in-house and actually doing the modelling in-house. The big drivers for this when clients tend to do it, wanting to scale a marketing mix modelling program in a cost-efficient way and delivering results back to the business in a much quicker way than would ordinarily be possible. So as an example, we're working with a drinks company at the moment. They were previously working with an external econometrics consultancy, and they could basically only afford to measure a couple of their key brands in a couple of markets. They're now bringing this in-house and already having much more granular results that are much more actionable, but scaling that to new brands that have never had measurement before and scaling to multiple new markets next year. But there are a few other kind of benefits to in-housing. It's not just being able to scale it cost efficiently. There's also actionability. So this really stems from having the control to be able to know and control exactly what's going into the model, and then having the people who are closest to the business actually being able to implement those results. Confidentiality is a really, really important one. So one of our clients is a US bank, and they're not even allowed to work with any external vendors because their sensitive sales data can't leave their walled garden. So in that kind of case, the choice to go in-house is a really logical one. So as IT departments are having more and more influence, I think this trend is definitely going to continue.
Do you feel like there's more brands who are wanting to just keep control of all of their data and not give it to, say, their agency? Do you see a trend of that? Is that going to be a problem?
So yes, I see a trend. Whether that's a problem is a matter for debate, I guess, of the extent to which people want to bring it in-house versus not, or if there are ways around that. But it's certainly a trend that there's much greater kind of governance around data and much more control, and anyone who has to fill in kind of information security, procurement forms knows like what a painful process that is these days. So it's definitely a trend. And I think, yeah, the third real benefit of in-housing is having the flexibility and the agility to kind of change course as things change in the business day to day. So as the questions change, as events happen in the real world, rather than being kind of stuck on the track, it just means that you can very quickly and easily pivot. So, yeah, we believe that basically for most businesses, kind of taking this in-house is a good idea in the long run, but not everyone's ready for that right now, and we appreciate it's not for everyone. But we often work with clients in a phased or hybrid approach to actually build out that capability. So you need to start with the people always, but then implementing the right technology choices, building out the processes, but then to scale that program over time. That said, having some external support is undoubtedly a good thing because you get that experience and knowledge across kind of different industries, different categories.
Is there a risk of that for a brand getting into this who want to bring it all in-house? They maybe don't have the right expertise internally. Is the talent there yet?
Yeah, that's the biggest risk, I think, to be sure. So I think having some external consultancy that you can call upon to help provide that broader view, where they've got the experience, got the knowledge across brands who've been there before and done it before, is definitely important. And I think the mix of that, I think, to the point you've made, like, it will depend client by client. Some people have got people with econometrics experience already, and then they can just get going. Often they haven't, so you've got to identify the right people in the business who might be able to pick this up, or make some new hires and bring them along the journey.
Gordon, are there enough of you going round in the market to be able to supply brand needs?
Sorry, what was that?
Are there enough measurement experts out there to supply what the brands need?
There's definitely enough experts. The issue is, are we able to use them right? Are they getting it right? It's such a unique skill set to have the smarts to be the data scientist that understands the principles of the modelling, but then actually be able to make it practical and meaningful and speak the language of the business. So there's definitely the right skills and it exists, but where it succeeds or fails is down to, have you got MMM partners, be that internal or external, that truly understand your business, so can give you meaningful recommendations, believable recommendations. As soon as you present something that somebody just, it doesn't feel right, you've lost it. You've lost credibility for the program.
Virginie, what are you hearing from your clients? What do they need?
I will say we have to go back to the brand's need. That's for sure. I'm Virginie Chesnais. I'm CMO for happydemics. I'll tell you why in a minute. Our brand lift technology covers 3 KPI dimensions, which are targeting performance, creative diagnosis, and the overall impacts on ad recallers. Now it's data, which is based on about 5,000 campaigns, shows a decline in attention since the beginning of 2022. Especially in Western Europe and North America. So ad recall is declining, interest is declining, both part of the creative diagnosis. Now, interestingly, we see that impact metrics such as intent, consideration are rising. So it might be tempting to say that you don't need brand efforts to drive intent. But our data also tells us a different story, which is that ads that spark interest through strong creative execution are closely tied to higher consideration. So basically, creative work enhances campaign effectiveness, and it's also true for sales-driven objectives. And so to avoid a possible further decline in attention, you have to work on both performance and brand building. And so to answer your question, this context tells us at least three things that I want to highlight today, which are first, advertisers need to balance short-term results and long-term brand building, what you were talking about. Also, there is a true, real opportunity to bridge the gap between teams. And remember, it's also about mixed media performance. So, in you to anyone in the room, advertisers need to do more with less. Unfortunately, focusing only on the final conversions, it means missing everything else that's important. It leaves a blind spot on the path to sales. And while it's great to see an ad's improved brand perception, it's even more interesting to see how the impact will evolve over time. So it's about understanding both immediate and long-term effects. And if we refocus on those brand metrics, we will have a full funnel approach that puts really consumers first. And that leads to my second point. This full funnel approach, it's always been a concern for marketing roles, not so much for media ones. So brand lift measurement gives us a real opportunity here to link campaign success to brand building, business outcomes, and to align them on the same objective, which is where to invest and for what purpose. Months from now, we had a meeting with Xiaomi, so giant tech player, with both media and marketing teams, and discussing how brand lift metrics could help. And they were looking at each other, finally speaking the same language. And at the end of the day, those working on the media side, they are addressing a marketing challenge. And if you want to increase awareness, you have to measure awareness. If not, you may just optimize their future spending on things that don't matter.
Well, what's the outcome that really matters? Is it sales? Is that what brands are asking for ultimately?
Ultimately, yes. But to drive sales, you have to build a brand that lasts. Like you have a banner with a simple CTA. It might work in the short term, but it's not enough. You have to build a brand that lasts. And remember when I was telling about the decline in attention, it ain't the same for all media. We have DOH, OOH, digital audio that still manage to capture attention. What I mean here, it also highlights the need for a diverse and informed marketing mix. All media have their potential, and advertisers need their media partners who we work with to leverage those strengths. So it's not about, I think, whether CTV is good or bad. It's about what it can do in a plan and how it can be optimized. And I also think media planning is shifting toward media trading with real-time optimization. It's fair enough. But when it comes to cross-media, we don't compare the same things. And so, and it's even more challenging with multi-campaign goals, awareness, consideration, conversion. And that's where brand lift measurement plays its part by offering insight into how different channels contribute to changes in brand perception, informing decision-making at a campaign level.
Jenny, what are your clients asking for in the measurement framework? What's going on there? What are you hearing?
It's starting to be quite standardized and very similar. My name is Jenny, for everyone. I'm a regional director at London. And in terms of what we're hearing from our clients, it's this challenge of bridging brand and performance together, right? How do we do it in a holistic way? And because we want it to be so simple, we want it to be digestible and really easy to explain, I think a lot of our clients and ourselves as well, we've lent really heavily on the funnel, upper, middle, lower. And I think we've simplified it to be able to explain and to be able to allocate these KPIs across these funnels, so awareness, consideration, and purchase intent. But with this oversimplification, we're taking away these nuances of that customer journey. How does your customer interact with your brand, and how does your brand interact with the customer? How is it perceived in market? And so I think oversimplifying it to the funnel is actually taking away your potential for growth and our clients' potential for growth. And so what we're trying to do now is we're trying to dig a little bit deeper. We're trying to understand what our clients are doing, how are the metrics actually, how are they interacting and how are they influencing these funnel KPIs? And so I'll provide an example with what we've done with one of our clients. They're in the banking and industry finance. And they came to us with a strategy for 2025, and they were like, we want to grow consideration. We want to push our consideration. And I'm sure everyone in the room will know that consideration is one of the most trickiest metrics to change. It is so stubborn. It's impossible over the course of a short term. And for like a client and a brand that's so well established in that industry, it's even harder. And so what we did is we actually pulled it back and we were like, okay, how can we actually drive consideration? And instead of looking at the funnel from its linear perspective of awareness to consideration, we took their sales data, we took brand health, attention, marketing metrics as well. And we tried to build a web and a network of how all of these metrics kind of relate to one another. How do they contribute to one another? And what we actually found was that for this particular brand, in this particular market, it wasn't just ad awareness that was contributing to their consideration. We found significant positive relationship with both emotional connection and quality. And so what we've been able to do now is actually have these metrics, these fast, more malleable, more tangible metrics that we can drive and change to now push consideration up as well. And so we've been able to marry up a slow-moving performance metric that we all agree is very important to the client. But we've been able to kind of marry that up with statistically significant positive relationships that we can influence with marketing more. And I think this is the change and what we're trying to do with our clients now. We're trying to give them that deeper understanding, that unique brand pattern that they need to be working towards. Because the funnel is wonderful, and I'm not here to say that the funnel is redundant. It is foundational and it's very important. But I think what we need to start doing is digging a little bit deeper, understanding what is actually driving consideration, what is driving an awareness, that we can actually start to leverage more with our marketing and show more impact to drive better business growth and ultimately better brand growth as well.
And that's what we're here to talk about with outcomes. And Samir, I know at Future TV Advertising Global last year, Kate Waters, who is the Director of Client Strategy and Planning at ITV, argued...
Hi, boss. Yes.
Yeah, right. Argued TV needs to become more outcomes driven to better compete against digital. So it'd be great to get a bit of an update on, one, how's that going? And also you've launched Lantern. So could you tell us a little bit more about what that is and what that's trying to achieve?
Sure. So, hello, Samir Modha. I look after the outcome measurement innovation team at ITV, which is a set of words that you wouldn't really expect ITV to have put together. But that's thanks to Kate, who sort of created the team that I now look after. In terms of how it's going, actually really well, thank you. But the premise of the team, I suppose, is we started by following the money. And more than half the media money in the UK is spent buying outcomes rather than eyeballs. And so, if it were the case, and I've seen that from both sides of the fence, because I've been media owner side, I've been agency side, I've been tech company at Google, now ITV, and if it were the case that telly didn't influence outcomes, didn't influence the business outcomes that advertisers care about in the end, then there'd be nothing to do. But actually, it does, and we all know that it does, but in a sense, from an outcome point of view, telly is a great product with shit measurement. So my team's mission is to sort of close the gap between the two and to sort of create ways of measuring its impact on all of those outcomes. And as we've heard, it is a spectrum. There's not any one kind of, it's only this outcome that we care about and no others are allowed to pass muster. There's a range of outcomes. And we've been sort of chipping away at that for a couple of years now. We started with something really basic. We thought, okay, we're a regional broadcaster. Let's do regional experiments. And I'm delighted to say, actually, those of you who were at the IPA Awards last night, the Grand Prix winner was Laithwaites, and we worked with Laithwaites on that analysis, and they used our geo-experiment methodology.
So how did that work? What was
so that's where, it's back to the incrementality thing. You've got some parts of the country which have telly, other bits that don't, and you look at the difference in the measurement between them, and you look for a lift. As Gordon was pointing out, the devil's in the detail, because you need to be careful that you're making a sensible comparison. And if you're a crooked media owner and you want to sort of make it look good, you would make sure that you just used as your control group all of the unexposed people. And that has what's called a selection effect, which is, if I show, there's a reason I show the ad to some people, and if I don't show the ad to other people and then I compare the performance, that's not fair. So you have to have a kind of neutral comparison. There's lots of clever ways of doing that. So that was our first step. Then we moved on to sort of more one-to-one matching. And this is where you get to something that's quite interesting here, which is that we don't, I don't think advertisers can do this on their own. Fundamentally, effectiveness is about linking the ad exposures with the outcomes one way or another, right? So there's two bits to that, it's two to tango. Yes, it's true that the outcome measurement is generally more sensitive, but that said, I've been blown away at, the number of advertisers that have been willing to share stuff with us, and they've said, look,
what do you mean by stuff?
So share their Google Analytics data or share their Google Ads data.
They're quite happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, share footfall data, because what they recognize is, okay, there's a group of people with some expertise, we need some help, they can do it, great. Or in other cases, the impression data will travel out to meet them. So, we work with happydemics, and effectively our impression data travels from us to them. They're able to then do the brand lift measurement, and then we can report on those results to the client. So you've got to be quite flexible in terms of what goes where and what data is shared with whom. Yes, there are some things like, if you're working for a bank, they might be a bit precious about that stuff. And that's sort of where Lantern comes in. So, anyone who works on the media owner side of things, you'll know that kind of selling measurement solutions is hard yards, because you've got to go, okay, right, I've got to get my tag onto your site. And you might have an advertiser that does it for you while you're on the call and goes, yeah, I've just tagged it, it's fine. The new to TV advertisers we work with, that's often the case. Or at the other extreme, you might get someone saying, well, yeah, totally fine in principle, but I've got to talk to group tech in Dusseldorf. And then we'll have a really complex negotiation about whether we're using German law or UK law to do it. And so that can take months and months. So sometimes getting that outcome data is tricky. So we thought, okay, what logically could we do? Why don't we just buy a truckload of outcome data for a whole load of businesses? We'll buy, the websites that people visit, we'll buy the searches they do, we'll buy the TikTok things they consume. In my case, weirdly, for some reason, it seems to be industrial process videos. I don't know why, I don't know what that says about me, And then you take all of that. So that's what we're doing. So with Measure Protocol, which is a company that has a panel that does this, they already have, years worth of these outcomes for lots of people. But then the neat bit, and this is why it had to be a cross-broadcaster collaboration, was we then said, okay, where could we get all of the exposure data? Because you need both bits to tango. Where could we get the exposure data? Well, turns out that tellies are quite smart these days. Even relatively dumb tellies are quite smart. And whether you've got Sky or YouView or something like that, it knows what you watched, or it knows what the device watched at least. And so you can so effectively, Measure Protocol will get the sort of references of those panelists, and they'll go over to Sky or to YouView, and they'll say, oh yeah, we know that ID. Let's find their 2 years worth of viewing, and then you put all of that in one place, and the proof of concept that we're doing effectively collapses all of this together. So you have one really nice cube of data that's got the whole range of outcomes that they did online, and it's got all of the ad exposures. So you can then start to play games between those two and look at a range of effects.
Overall, it seems to me that things are merging, right? We've got brand teams, performance teams coming together and needing to work together to make things happen. It's clear that you could do brand building, but it leads to outcomes and sales. How are How are you all finding it working with, say, siloed brand and performance teams? Are they having to come closer together? Are there massive frictions at the moment? I don't know if anybody wants to take that first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm lucky enough to be part of a combined brand and performance media team, which is how Europe operates for Adidas. It's not necessarily the same in every market, and therefore I've seen it work for us. You have to be working together, and to do that, you have to be speaking a common language. We've talked about the importance of outcomes and success needs to be defined, but ultimately everything has to ladder up to sales. There's no point driving awareness consideration if at some point it doesn't lead to sales. So you need to ultimately get to a common language and a time frame that the business is willing to accept for when you're making decisions. It's difficult and it's always a fight, and the business is really careful about what behaviours it's motivating. Is the e-com team only motivated to get e-com only sales in our business versus being happy for you to go into JD Sports or anywhere else? It's like you need to make sure you're aligned on success, but linking everything back to the same final outcome.
Does this, I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that first before I ask my next question.
A little story. I mean, this is in the sports shoe world, in fact. I went to buy a pair of trainers, and I ordered them online.
Adidas trainers, right?
And
wait till we know that.
Went to the store to pick them up, and they said, "Oh, yeah, you could definitely have those, but should we just do a quick gait analysis for you?" I went, "Okay. I mean, I don't look like I run, but I do occasionally." And then they said, "Well, actually, in the end, we'd recommend these others for you." And I was sort of at the till. I said, "Just hang on a minute. Well, there was something going on here, wasn't there?" And they said, "Yeah, you see, if you bought the shoes that you ordered online, then you count as one of online sales. Whereas if you return those and then buy this pair from us, that counts towards our sales target." And that sort of, micro differences and tensions in incentives is something to be really alert to. It's not that people are bad, they're just following slightly different incentives. And you get the same thing with measurement. Google has had this for years. You've got, search team. You go to a friendly measurement expert at Google and they'll say, you need to think about this in the round and you need to do all sorts of things. And yet you've got a lot of search teams, hopefully not yours, who are still banging the last click drum. Why are they doing that? Well, it's really hard to let go of. Why am I going to sign up to an initiative that's going to make my medium look less good and make me look less good to my boss? And the human factors side of the measurement is so important, even within one organization, let alone, I've got to share my impression data with happydemics, they've got to share a report with the advertiser, who gets to see what, all that sort of stuff is and the lesson I would draw out of that, actually, which maybe takes us in a different direction, is what you're hearing at the moment is that we're all talking about this very much as an individual brand. And I think there's a problem here, which is I think that we're all too selfish and we all think that we're all special and that our brand is different and that, Adidas will respond totally differently to different media inputs than, ASICS. Probably not true, right? And yet, as an industry, we're not really doing enough, I don't think, in terms of collective learning. Because we're all kind of, we're all like Gollum, holding our econometrics model to our chest. It's like, oh, it's the precious. I'm going to share it with anyone. First-party data is mine. And it's like, just chill a bit. There's things that we all want to know that you can't know on your own. So if you're willing to share, then you can start to get other places. Because it's a really interesting media landscape, and there's so much we don't know. Sorry, I get carried away.
Do you feel that it's important that measurement, I think you're going to say yes. Is it important that measurement people get in that front room because they can provide that balance between all the different teams, bring data, brand and performance all together? As measurement people, you're probably like, yes, we need to be in the front room, but is it being traditionally seen as quite a backseat role? Is there something that needs to be done there?
I think one thing that needs to be done is, I'm really pleased today that incrementality has been such a buzzword, because that's a positive sign for the industry in general. But really landing that incrementality with as senior an audience as possible, who's above the politics. Because I think coming back to the brand versus performance and protecting sales that we own on a last touch basis, there's like a psychological journey that people need to go on to think away from last touch and move towards incrementality. And you need someone high enough in the organisation who can just manage that and dictate this is the way we need to do things, because there's a scary amount of companies that still using last touch and have that kind of siloed approach.
So, Gordon, your role, I don't know if it says it up there, is actually director of paid measurement and learning, right? So what's the learning part? Like what are you having to teach, to Phil's point, more senior leaders in the business?
It's for two aspects. It's to make sure truly we put actionability at the heart of everything. Of, if you're measuring something, it's to learn something, to do something differently, or keep doing something that you now know is working really well. So actually, primarily it's just to focus everything on true outcomes, actionability, and change and improvement. But then it does actually do exactly that. I'm responsible for trying to educate a very complex business with very different opinions on what our measurement tools are, but not going into the detail. Nobody has time for that. It's complicated, what some people do. It's complicated. It's educating at the right level of what do you need to know, what are your watch outs for what will mislead you, like the key differences between last click, what you'll see in branded term search compared to generic term search. It's like educating people on what they need to watch out for, and then ideally just build that position to be the trusted advisor. So measurement, I think, is critical. Yes, they should be there. They need to be impartial. They need to be a trusted advisor. And if you're not, like, that's where it all goes wrong. It's you can't actually learn and drive change.
So what's going to drive change next? I want to go down the line on each. What's the silver bullet for moving the needle on outcome measurement strategies more generally? What do you need to see from the market? What's your role in this?
Well, listening to all this and with my own point of view, I think it will be about both precision and scalability. Like the real value of measurement, it lies in its repetition, enabling like robust benchmarking, optimization, and and I think like I'm very excited about the industry's growing culture of measurements and effectiveness, and I feel like here in the UK there is a great dynamic, great momentum. And I also think that we have to put consumers first, and so to me, in this ever-evolving media world, what will drive the future is future-proof metrics. Future-proof metrics like declarative data, it's been around since the dawn of marketing. It will probably remain after us. We're just making it more accessible. But that's the only way to put consumers first, create stories with them, and that's timeless.
So future-proof metrics.
Yeah.
Gordon?
I love to overthink an analogy, become a bit too obsessed, and it goes stupid, and it's pointless. So I overthought this, thinking about silver bullet. Often said it, stop expecting it to be a silver bullet. But it dawned on me, like, there is. We've just kind of misframed that analogy. And I think, I'm willing to stake it, I think right now, econometrics, MMM, is your silver bullet of being able to unify this full framework. It relies on the rest of the framework, but it absolutely is your silver bullet for linking it all together. However, the silver bullet, you need it when that werewolf is chasing you. Like, you need to be able to shoot it straight away, yet MMM takes too long. It is the silver bullet, but you're not going to have it ready. And I've built on this analogy far too much in my head. It got really boring, but like, there's too many things. Like, also, you have your bullet. Do you have the weapon to fire your bullet? Will it be strong enough to penetrate the skin? That's your influence in the business. And then also, there's a lot of people selling you silver-plated bullets out there, which haven't got enough silver to actually pierce the skin. And then finally, there's people telling you gold's better. Use this gold bullet. It's far better for you. Well, gold does not kill werewolves.
Werewolves, bullets, econometrics, you've got it. Jenny?
I think where measurement is going and where we should be using it is also within our experiments. And I think perhaps we've touched on it as well. We shouldn't be afraid to experiment. We shouldn't be afraid to test the outputs and hypotheses that come out of MMM, our silver bullet. And I think if it's a mentality of the results approving or disproving your hypothesis, it should actually be the results that either show you learnings, that you win, or where you learn. There are no losers when we experiment. There's only winning or learning. And I think that's something that we are always trying to teach our clients, just to never fear experimentation, never fear the unknown, because that's the only way we learn.
Don't fear experimentation. Phil?
I can't believe no one's mentioned AI yet. Maybe that's a good thing, but I think certainly that's going to help a lot in the measurement space. But in order to make that work, you need to get the basic fundamentals right. So I think that's the key focus, is having clearly defined objectives, clean data with the quality control checks that you need on that, and then really being super focused on what we're actually going to do with the outcome of this measurement. Because too much we measure and then wonder how we're actually going to apply it. Whereas I think being super focused on that is what's going to shift the needle.
And Samir, final word?
I'm going to stick with sharing, actually. I mean, I'm a bit of a hippie in all of this, including the hair. But I do think that we can learn more together as an industry than we can kind of guarding our own learnings quite, so I'll stick with the bullets. If we're all firing a bullet in roughly the same direction, we'll learn more about projectiles. There you go. So that I think is like we did a thing, and it's about then working with groups that have pockets of data. So, we did a thing, I'm not blowing our trumpet here, I'm blowing OMG's actually. We did a piece of work with OMG, and they worked incredibly hard to pool search auction data across 20 plus of their advertisers. And we worked with them on an analysis of that to say, okay, broadly speaking, we know there's something going on between tele and search. What does that look like? How does it play out? Any one of those advertisers just couldn't have, that's a werewolf that's too far in the distance. They just couldn't have hit it. But collectively, we got a whole set of results out of that showed, a whole load of quite interesting things, which, we're sort of gradually sort of feeding out. But that's an example, and there's loads more. Agencies, I think, are a kind of key part of this because they often have multiple clients, I've heard. And, by pooling across those and by the advertisers, I guess, so those advertisers in the room who are sort of, in golem mode, are there places where you could relax the constraints a little within safe parameters and say, look, I'm willing to pool this if I can learn this? That then starts to break down some of these barriers, I think.
A warm applause for my fantastic panel. Thank you very much.